And breaking news on the Daily Wrap tonight is former Speaker of the House Denny Hastert is indicted on federal charges. We have the details. Governor George Pataki joins the ever-growing list of candidates running for president. Does he have any shot at the nomination? Donald Trump expected to make a big announcement. Wonder what that could be about. And former Senator Rick Santorum, another candidate, has some choice words for Josh Duggar. Trust me when I say he isn't following in Mike Huckabee's footsteps. We've got all that, plus potluck and yay and nay. This is the Daily Wrap, live from New York City. And welcome to the show. I'm Joe Concha, and joining me is Sirius XM radio host, senior political columnist for Forbes, and my co-host, Rick Unger. Thank you, sir. To his right, Philly attorney and America's pundit, Heather Hansen. And joining us later, he's the editor of the Wisdom Daily, Rabbi Brad Hirschfield. Will be here, we promise. All right, it's time for the Daily Download. And let's start with some breaking news. Former Speaker of the House, Denny Hastert, has been indicted, as we told you before. Rick Unger has the details. Rick.
Two charges. One of them is a banking violation having to do with structuring payments. What that means, and the indictment's very careful not to name who's involved beyond Hastert, but the allegation is that he's been making a $3.5 million payment to an individual they identify only as individual A, and it's for a prior past misconduct. The problem is he began withdrawing sums of money, keeping it under $10,000 because banks have to report and you have to fill out a form when you do a transaction that exceeds $10,000. He was avoiding that. To make it even worse, when he was questioned by the FBI, he allegedly lied to the FBI. So the charges, if he's convicted, carry up to 5 years on each one of them and a $250,000 fine on each one of them. The longest-serving Republican Speaker of the House is in big trouble tonight.
Wow. Well, certainly we'll be talking about this more in the coming days and weeks, no question about it. Moving on to Baltimore, lawyers for 6 police officers there charged in the death of Freddie Gray are asking for a change of venue, while the prosecutor faces new accusations of bias. State Attorney Marilyn Mosby is under fire after her personal Twitter account was seen favoriting some provocative tweets. Let's take a look at some. One tweet called the police officers, quote, those 6 thug cops, which was favorited, as you can see circled, by Mosby. While another tweet, liked by her account, I should say, was one that she said, quote, infuriates a certain kind of white person. That was by Amy Alexander, not by Mosby. Let's make that clear. It was just favorited by her. But Mosby says someone hacked into her Twitter account and that she was not the one who favorited those tweets. Let's make that clear. Last month, Mosby's impartiality was questioned in the way she announced the charges against the officers.
To the people of Baltimore and the demonstrators across America, I heard your call for no justice, no peace. Your peace is sincerely needed as I work to deliver justice on behalf of this young man.
Now, in addition to asking for a change of venue, defense lawyers also filed a motion demanding Mosby rescue herself. We're also learning today that Mosby's first true appearance on the national stage actually came 15 years ago, at the age of 20, on, of all places, Judge Judy.
I'm going to get every cent that you're suing for, judgment for the plaintiff.
Thank you.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
I feel like finally there's some justice served.
I guess she was mad at me about the whole situation. But I have no hard feelings.
I've tried to speak to the DA, I've spoke to police officers, and finally, Judge Judy, she finally gave me justice.
You can find anything on YouTube these days, apparently. So these latest developments come as Baltimore is seeing a surge in violence since the death of Freddie Gray. Just today, a woman and an 8-year-old boy were shot to death in southwest Baltimore. That makes 38 homicides this month, the worst month in more than 15 years. Let's bring in legal analyst and attorney Eric Guster, fresh off the streets of Manhattan and looking quite composed, my friend.
Yes. You may not cut it.
An Alabama boy can take a little heat.
Yes, good job. Birmingham, right?
Yes, Birmingham, Alabama.
Okay, very good. So Mosby says that her Twitter account was hacked. And it seems like every celebrity, whenever this sort of thing happens, uses that excuse and nobody buys it. Do you buy it?
I don't know. And Twitter can get so many people in trouble. That's why you have to be extremely careful with social media at all, you have to make sure you don't like certain things, retweet certain things, share different things on your page, because when you share those things, then it's out there for everyone to see, and then that does give the impression of impropriety or some type of bias, even if you don't mean it, because she probably just liked posts as they come. You know, when people tweet you, you like and retweet them and don't half read them, and that could have gotten her in a little trouble with this one.
I would find it really hard to believe that she was hacked, because it was only two things that were favorited. It's not as if she was hacked and then she was out there tweeting
They were arbitrary
things.
and they happened to be.
Right, and they happened to be just likes, favorites. It seems a little bit of a stretch for me, and I think it's consistent with what we've seen from her thus far.
Do you think she has an impartiality problem?
Yeah, I mean, to say the least. I think she has a huge impartiality problem, and in a case as important as this, I think that it's important that we have someone who can really be a bastion of justice and not any semblance
Fair
of
question,
impartiality.
Rick?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to note that the state's attorney's Twitter account was also hacked 3 weeks ago, and there's no disagreement that it happened. So it's not a very hard stretch to imagine if somebody was hacking her account at the state's attorney's office that they might hack her personal account. So since you cannot in any way, shape, or form show that she's lying, sometimes it pays to give her the benefit of the doubt, even if you think she's the worst human being that ever lived. Now, on that topic, can we talk about the Judge Judy thing? Because I know you think it was just grandstanding or something, right?
No.
Do you know why people go on Judge Judy?
There's a number of different reasons they may go on it.
Name one.
15 minutes of fame?
No.
That
Wrong
most
one.
certainly may not be the one you wanted.
I'll tell you what, I'll give you a much better one.
One.
I'll give you a much better one. Imagine yourself a 20-year-old college student. You get damaged by your neighbor. You don't have the money to hire an attorney, but more importantly, do you know what happens when you go on Judge Judy and you win?
They pay for everything, and they fly you to LA.
Yes, they do, and they pay for everything.
Get you some time
So
on
her
television.
$2,000 was
It could have been
guaranteed.
that she just wanted to be a lawyer.
Well,
she could have just wanted to be a lawyer, and she's litigating a case, and this is her one chance before actually going to law school that she can litigate a case in front of Judge Judy. Who doesn't want to be in front of Judge Judy?
I think it was probably more likely she wanted. I don't either. I think it was more likely she wanted to get her $2,000, which is a ton of money.
Claims court in her local
And how would she have
jurisdiction.
collected?
So she got entitled to.
In small claims?
No, she could have gotten a judgment. How would she have collected?
The same way that she collected under this.
No, you're wrong. I'm sorry. She collected on this from the show. Judge Judy pays the $2,000.
Now we're stretching
not
like
the
Stretch
defendant.
Armstrong right now in connecting Judge Judy to this case.
No, I'm not.
Yes,
Well,
yes, we
no,
are.
you're stretching when
It's
you
like-
bring it up. Exactly.
Yeah,
But since it's brought up, I think we should be fair about it.
I don't think dissecting
Eric, last word.
why she went to Judge Judy is really a
it's
big
not.
issue. But as far as impropriety, I think she should stay on the case. I believe that since I know there's a big issue about campaign donations, and there's not one DA who's run that has not gotten multiple donations from police to defense lawyers and prosecutors, everyone else. So I don't see that as that big of an
Do you
issue.
think the announcement when she listed the charges was a little bit political? In other words, it wasn't just were these officers are indicted here, here, here. It seemed to be more like a political speech.
Well, the community wants transparency in the process, and that's what so many people have called for transparency with Ferguson and other cases. They just want to know what's going on, and that's why she read the charges, told them what the details were, the basic details, not what someone said, not that someone admitted something or told on someone else. She was just talking about the basics, which is really in a court record that anyone can go down to the courthouse, pull the file, and look at anyway. So I don't think it was overstretching it.
Okay.
By the way, there's only one reason why that you could even come close to a recusal here, and that's her relationship with the attorney for the family. But the attorney for the family is not in any way, shape, or form involved in the court case with the defendants. So there is absolutely no valid reason that she should recuse herself.
Absolutely.
There's actually some lawyers out there that says she should be disbarred altogether.
Yeah, I know. Local lawyers,
people can
many
say
of
anything.
them. Yeah, and there's a strong argument. The Maryland Court of Appeals actually came down with a decision that a state's attorney in Maryland prior to her, similar statements, and that lawyer was highly disciplined
But not
for those types of
disbarred for
statements.
that.
Disbarred is
No,
She
I've
can't
never.
be disbarred for that.
Well,
No, you can't. What law did she break? What ethics law did
it's
she break?
3.6 Maryland Rule of
Which says
professional
what?
that says that extrajudicial. I mean, you want to get into this?
We have to go. No, there's no way we're gonna have time for
extrajudicial
that.
Not a
Exactly.
disbarable
Coming up
offense.
next, George Pataki jumps into the presidential race, and Brad Hirschfield joins us on the panel. Keep it right here on Newsmax TV. Eric, thanks for joining us, by the way.
This morning, I announce I am a candidate for the Republican nomination for President of the United States.
He literally looks no different than when he was governor of New York. It's remarkable. Anyway, another day and another Republican announcing intentions to run for president. Today, former three-term New York Governor George Pataki officially threw his hat into the ring. And welcome back to the show, Brad Hirschfield, now joining the panel. Get here on time, will you? 7 o'clock start.
I am going to hear about that. I wanted said I was here on time.
He was.
Early.
I was here on time, early even.
Right.
We are your witness.
New York Giants coach Tom Coughlin, if you're not 10 minutes early, you're late. All right, he's been here since 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
Well, who are we kidding? Anyway, the governor, the guy we were talking about before, Pataki, is positioning himself as a Washington outsider and moderate who won 3 terms in a very heavily Democratic state. Pataki also took aim at Hillary Clinton, who isn't, who's running on the platform of income inequality.
Unless by middle class they mean someone who charges a poor country $500,000 for a half-hour speech, that's their party's candidate. She speaks for the middle class. They are the party of privilege. We are the party of the middle class.
Sounds a bit like Rick Santorum. Anyway. So, gang, Brad, we'll bring you in first. Does the 69-year-old George, but he doesn't look 69.
No, he doesn't. He looks great.
Right, exactly. So I think that plays a role, by the way. McCain looked his age. He doesn't look his age. Does he have any chance of the nomination?
You know, I don't know. He's polling at 0% in the field. So
0.0?
There you go.
Wow.
So he couldn't do worse. Here's what's interesting. There are a couple things that I think genuinely are interesting to him about him. First of all, he's the first declared candidate when it comes to national security who has said we might need to put boots on the ground in confronting ISIS. That's a pretty bold posture for a guy whose identity politically is actually quite moderate. And that's an interesting thing to be staking out. The other piece, and you alluded to it, Joe, he actually won 3 terms in a heavily Democratic state. There's a piece of me that wonders, is he actually running for vice president? This is the kind of candidate who actually could, and we haven't seen it since 1884, who could deliver New York as a red state. And that's an interesting possibility.
Heather, if he's running for vice president,
Against Carly.
Against Carly. This has to get your...
2 people running for vice president.
Yes.
Listen, he's polling at 0. I think that there's such a huge field, but he shouldn't be underestimated. I don't think he's ever lost an office that he has run for.
He's not.
And that is something. There's something to be said for that. You know, he knows how to get people out. He knows how to get the vote. So I don't think that we should underestimate him, though I don't see him on the debate stage.
I feel a cynical comment coming on.
I think Carly has nothing to fear. Obviously, he's not going to get the nomination of his party for president. I think we'd all agree with that. Here's the problem.
For reasons why? For the folks at home? Pro-choice?
I was
anti-NRA?
Start with all of those things. He is a very progressive Republican, but the fact that he's polling at 0%, nobody knows who he is. He can't possibly raise enough money to solve that problem.
Isn't it amazing? He won 3 terms and no one knows who he is.
Because he won him in one state.
Right,
People
and they were
don't
20
all
years
live
ago.
in New York. I got to tell you, George Pataki, and I like George Pataki, don't misunderstand me. I think he was a good governor. I think he's a good guy. Here's the thing, though. He could not win in New York today, most likely. He cannot deliver New York. Now, who puts a vice presidential candidate on their ticket who not only is pro-choice, but can't even carry the state he comes from? You just don't do that because they provide you with no value.
Well, we're presuming he can't, and I tend to think you're right, but I think that's the only possible angle because polling at 0%, he's a smart guy, and even batting 1,000, he can't possibly be thinking the White House is his.
What's he been doing these past couple of years? Nothing.
Nothing. You think it's just boredom?
Well, I think
oh, come on. That's just too cynical.
I think he
Even
sees the
for
field
you.
and says, I could offer something
No,
different.
I think it's an alternative. Right. And I think that is what's interesting. So the other possibility is he will actually change the race because this is a principled guy who is quite progressive on a range of social issues, who's moderate on economic issues, and I wouldn't call him overly hawkish, but he's strong on defense. There is no one inhabiting that space. Now, whether or not it's possible to get through the primary process with the Republican Party as it's currently constructed and have that happen.
There's a reason nobody's inhabiting
a pig
that
is flying,
space.
right? And I get that, and that's my own personal concerns coming out. But I do think it's interesting to have him give it a shot because of those things.
Well, and his speech today raised a lot of issues, so it's just going to get more people talking.
True.
Ask Governor Hausman how it works out when you occupy that space.
announcement. Good point. Good point. And he has to look up at John Kasich, who's now 200% in front of him when you really do that.
That's right.
There you go.
Yes. So, anyway, Donald Trump plans to announce whether he'll run for president, but a new poll finds Trump in single digits among Republicans. The Quinnipiac survey shows a 5-way tie at 10%. Look at that. That's very,
Trump's
very
not
neat.
on the list.
You got to say that. Yep. Bush, Carson, Huckabee, Rubio, Scott Walker. But when it comes to a head-to-head matchup with Hillary Clinton, only Rand Paul and Marco Rubio are a threat at this early stage. He's trailing Clinton by 4 points. What do you make of these numbers? Brad Hirschfield going first again.
Well, the second item I think here we've got up on the screen now, they're declared candidates. Right. Bush is not. Right. So I think we have to be very careful. Also, the correlation between victory and any polling this early, back to 0.0, it doesn't work out that way. And to be clear, the Donald also has the highest percentage of people who said under no circumstances would they vote for him. So let's be very clear. Not only is he not a threat, unless we want to turn it into like another cartoon event, it's almost not worth talking about,
Heather,
unless you're in the orange hair dye business.
So June 16th is when he'll make his announcement. Will the announcement be, I'm running for president, or I'm opening up a new golf course in Bernardsville, New Jersey?
I mean, I think that we've had the sense that he's really running this time. I think that, he's definitely...
Exploratory committee.
Right, absolutely. I mean, he's definitely put down a lot more foundation than he ever has before. I agree with Brad. I don't think it's going to add a lot. And as far as the polls are concerned, I think the numbers that you see there are just the people who are in the public eye. I think that, once Jeb Bush decides to formally run, it will change, and it will continue to change for the next year.
Guess what? You have 5 seconds to make your last word, but I don't think you'll need any more than this.
I don't think I do either. The polls mean absolutely nothing.
Okay, very good. And Trump is running or not running?
I think he might run this time.
Okay, for entertainment value, we are hoping for this, absolutely. Anyway, coming up, another Muhammad cartoon contest coming, but our organizer trying to incite violence. Don't go anywhere. And welcome back to The Wrap. Washington, D.C.'s Transit Authority deciding today to ban all issue-oriented ads at a cost of roughly $2 to $3 million in revenue in an effort to keep Pamela Geller from advertising a Muhammad cartoon. The drawing won first place at an event in Texas this month, you may remember, where 2 gunmen, reportedly inspired by ISIS, were shot and killed after they opened fire on security. The contest was inspired by the American Freedom Defense Initiative. The group is now seeking approval for an ad calling on Americans to support free speech. It includes a cartoon of Muhammad waving a sword and shouting, quote, "You can't draw me." The group's founder, Pamela Geller, put out this statement: "There is nothing about the cartoon, this cartoon, that incites violence. It is within the established American tradition of satire. If America surrenders on this point, the freedom of speech is a relic of history." Apparently the Washington, D.C. Transit Authority disagreed. Brad, do you agree with the decision?
I don't agree with their decision. I happen to hate these ads. I think they're a bad idea. But the reason I don't agree with their decision is they punted. They actually, rather than take a position and make certain legitimate distinctions, they said, who are we to make distinctions? Healthy cultures are in the business of making those distinctions. And I know you're going to say the courts have never allowed that. Then we should keep relitigating it and figure out where the line is. We made a decision. We don't advertise cigarettes in public conveyances because it's bad for the public health. The truth of the matter is Pamela Geller would love these ads to incite violence. If they incited violence, it would prove that she's correct. She, in fact, may be. Everything she says is not wrong. But you can make a good case a bad way, and that is exactly what she is doing. And there's no reason why civil or public utilities should be supporting that.
Heather, why is Brad wrong?
Well, I'm not going to say that Brad is wrong, but under the law, here's the deal. It's been litigated. It's been litigated in Boston. It's been litigated in Chicago, D.C., just recently in Philadelphia. Every court has said that the First Amendment mandates that she is able to do this, and it's been her organization in each one of those cases. In fact, the New York court has actually said fear of spontaneous attacks is not enough to outweigh the First Amendment, and this is what the First Amendment is for. I mean, it can drive some people to violence to see the flag burning, and yet we do not outlaw that because of the First Amendment right that is so inherent in our rights as Americans. So while I agree with the fact that everyone believes, the majority of Americans believe that what she says is distasteful, it is the most important of our rights, many of us believe, and that's why the courts have said that she's allowed to do it. And to just say we're not going to have those ads anymore, it's like saying we're not going to have books because we might not like the content of certain books. It's ridiculous.
Judge Unger, how do you rule?
Heather makes a very compelling argument. She does, and everything she said is correct. The courts have absolutely substantiated it. I too hate these ads, so I'm not in the least bit sorry to see them go. It's too bad that this was the only way that Washington could get around it, and it was the only way. I think there's no question that had it gone to court there, you'd have the same resolution. It would be ordered to be put up. You know, you can't legislate bad taste, apparently, and I think that Pamela Geller behaves in the worst possible taste. But we can't legislate that away.
Are you surprised that she's continuing these contests as she is
No,
after
are you
what
kidding?
happened last time, where a security guard
I want to be
got shot in the leg, and
Not
two
only
people
do
were
I
killed
think
in
she
the
doesn't
parking lot?
care, I think this is what they
what
want
she
to
wants,
have happen.
yeah.
The worse the response is, the more it proves her claim that if you give Muslims a chance, not a particular Muslim, not a particular ideology within Islam, but anyone who identifies as a Muslim, they will go violent. They will become terrorists. Actually, that's the problem with this. And by the way, I agree with you. If this was about putting these ads up in general, that is her right, however offensive it may be. And it's a sacred right that trumps however disgusting the ads are. But I don't think that's necessarily the same, or should be the same, when the government puts it up on the side of their institutions. And that's the distinction I would make. But no, the really ugly part here, Joe, is I think she wants bad stuff to happen.
Wow. Doesn't she have her own security team?
Yes, she
that will
does.
protect
She
her,
does.
so everybody else gets shot and they'll get her out of the building?
She does, but you know, whether or not she, you know, I go back to the same point, but you know, we were just talking about this during the break, in Iran they have a Holocaust cartoon contest, which is abhorrent and horrible, and they do it, they say, in order to show the double standard, but you don't see people getting killed there. And so if we start taking away First Amendment rights because we are afraid of violence, where do we end up? I think that it is such an important thing, and it's an important thing that we do not back down on these issues.
You can't argue that point.
Meanwhile, in Phoenix, another group will be holding an anti-Islam rally tomorrow outside of a mosque. It will also feature a Draw Muhammad cartoon contest. Those are popular these days, apparently. At this point, do you think the organizers are almost hoping for violence at this event?
Same thing. They actually are posting on social media, come armed. We don't want anything bad to happen, but come armed. This is outrageous. If you want to take this issue on, and if she wants to take this issue on, it's very simple. Don't do drawings of someone that actually violate their faith. Post all the countries in the world where people who do this are executed for expressing their right to expression. If you want to call people out on that, call them out. That's a good thing to do.
Like Saudi Arabia.
But we wouldn't be talking about it. I mean, you know, that's part of the draw is to get people talking about it, and it's an issue that perhaps we should be talking about.
Was that an attempt at wordplay when you say part of the draw?
Yes, it was.
Wow. Outstanding.
It is now.
Anyway, coming up next, White House attorney arguing Obamacare gets slammed by federal judge. You'll have to find out why next. This is the Daily Wrap, live from New York City. And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. Today, lawyers for the Obama administration had a tough time as they tried to get a judge to toss out a Republican lawsuit over the Affordable Care Act. This was the first major hearing on the challenge. The Department of Health and Human Services argued the House doesn't have the legal standing to challenge the way the administration implements Obamacare. Republicans say the administration unlawfully bypassed Congress. At issue are executive changes authorizing Treasury payments to health care insurers without the funding being agreed by Congress. Federal Judge Rosemary Collyer, a Bush appointee, told administration lawyers they haven't directly addressed the arguments made by Republicans. Collyer asked the administration to explain why its actions are not an insult to the Constitution. She didn't say when she would rule on the administration's request. Let's all look into our crystal balls, shall we? What is the future of Obamacare, Rabbi Hershey?
I think it depends who wins the next election, really. I think it's very hard to prognosticate until we know who takes the presidency, because I think one of two things will happen. If a Republican takes it, the likelihood of real challenges, which will at least require reconstructing the law, I don't think it's going to get canceled completely, are very real. If Hillary, that's going to be the Democratic candidate, wins, then I think actually she delays things long enough that it becomes normal, people adjust to it, and we move on whether we like it or not.
Can the toothpaste be put back in the tube at this point with all the enrollees that they have? And if you're a Republican candidate, you have to offer an alternative. It can't be just repeal. Okay, well, what are you going to do with all those people that are enrolled?
Well, that's what's going on right now. When we were talking about this a little bit yesterday, that, you know, if the Supreme Court it's before the Supreme Court right now, and there's a good chance that that part of it will be overturned, and then in which case the Republicans have to come up with something to find a way to put the toothpaste back in the tube or put it on a different tooth.
Good thing. You could have said unring the bell as well,
The
Rick.
future of Obamacare will be decided in the next 2 weeks, because we'll have that decision, and it's pick 'em. Nobody has any idea which way this is going to go. So that is it. Now, here's what makes it a little bit odd. What's probably going to happen if the court rules that that you cannot offer the subsidies in states where they're not running their own exchange, where the federal government is, then there will be a bill put in by the Republicans. We talked about it last night. Senator Johnson of Wisconsin has already proposed it. He's getting some guff on it, but it would basically hold things as they are through 2017. In other words, past the election, and that's where what you're saying could come into play. But even if it's a Democratic president, if we get to 2017 and both houses are still controlled by the Republicans, now you're going to see some real weird stuff, because the Republicans can't come up with a way to fix Obamacare. This is the little secret nobody ever wants to discuss, because the way we are handling it is the only way you can cover pre-existing conditions. Since the dawn of mankind, we have not found another way to make that happen, and that's why they'll never be able to get around it. So,
do you think Hillary Clinton will run on Obamacare, or she just kind of won't mention it?
Well, I think a lot will
because
have to
the
do
president
with this
thinks
ruling.
it's a success.
Yes, and I think a lot will have to do with this ruling. I mean, we'll know in the next, and then by then, I mean, again, we've got a long time to figure out what's going to happen as a result of this ruling with the Supreme Court, and then she can have time to sort of adjust her sails.
And Hillary won't make her call on this kind of an issue based on what the president thinks. She'll make it based on what the public thinks. And the public, while they're getting better on the issue, they still do not favor the law. They don't understand why. They think they do, but they don't favor it.
In 1993, Hillary Clinton actually was tasked with creating universal health care, and it got shot down, including by people in her own party. It was just seen as too bulky. Maybe it was before its time. Who knows? So I'd be curious if she then she's clearly shown that she's willing to run away from herself on certain issues, like immigration, for instance, right? So I'm just fascinated with this. Was supposed to be such a huge presidential topic during the campaign, and I have a feeling it's going to be kind of ignored by both sides.
Yes. What Hillary Clinton does not get credit for is that what she did in '93, while it did go down in flames, played an incredibly important role in the creation of Obamacare, if for no other reason than the response of the Republicans to what Hillary proposed. The Heritage Foundation was basically Obamacare.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Many of the things Heritage is a landmark study. So I think with all these shifts, they're evolutionary in nature, which is why I wouldn't even hold it against her running away from herself. You play certain roles in the evolution of an idea well ahead of its implementation. And I think that's what we're seeing here, which is why I think ultimately long-term crystal ball, some version of this makes it, but I think in ways that are going to be significantly altered over the next 2 to 4 years.
Can it survive?
And that's the way it should be, by the way. Legislation's supposed to be amended and changed as you learn
it's an evolving,
from
it's
the
a work in
experience.
progress.
Right. The only reason we're not approaching it this way is that the Republicans had so much success in taking a strong opposition to it. It worked for them.
Sure.
So that's why we got into this position we're in. There's nothing unusual about seeing what works and what doesn't. And amending it.
No, and language is so important, right? So if you are a Democrat and you do bring up Obamacare, the trick is don't call it Obamacare. Call it the Affordable Care Act.
And
the Jimmy Kimmel video where he goes out into the street like you do, and he asks people, "Do you agree with the Affordable Care Act?" Absolutely do.
Love that.
Obamacare, that's the worst. Yeah,
That's
so
right.
shows how informed we are or are not. Anyway, coming up next, it's potluck time. Heather and Rick will share their favorite stories of the day next. This is the Daily Wrap. You are not allowed to go anywhere. And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. It's potluck time. This is a part of the show. We go around the table, share our favorite stories of the day, and then if you're wearing pink, you get to go first.
Only one pair of
Looking
pink
slippy,
guys.
Hanson. Well
I got
done.
pink on
Oh,
too.
that's red.
That's red.
Okay.
You get to go
All
second,
right,
and
I'll
I'll
go
give you a little
second.
more time because my story's a little shorter than yours, I think.
Very good. Go ahead.
Tonight I'm going to talk about Bruce Jenner. not about his transformation, but about his legal troubles. So he was involved in a car accident that was fatal sometime a couple of months ago, and he has been sued for what's called wrongful death by the stepchildren of the woman that was killed in the accident. And this week there were reports in TMZ and some of the other newspapers and online that said that he was saying that they were not going to get a dime, and that they were not, because they weren't close to her, they shouldn't get any of the money, and all kinds of things. And I just thought it was important to point out that what he actually did was what his lawyer is incumbent upon his lawyer to do as part of being a lawyer, which is to file a motion in response to the complaint to dismiss the case, because the stepchildren's relationship with the mother was absolutely nil. So the woman who died had no relationship whatsoever with these stepchildren, who, now that she has passed, have filed a lawsuit for money. So the defense in that type of case is to say that she wasn't supporting them emotionally, she wasn't supporting them financially, and therefore they don't have any true damages such that they can actually recover anything. But we see so many times when there's lawsuits in the press that when the defense files something that is a motion that they have to file, it then turns into something negative, like Bruce Jenner saying that they don't deserve a lick of money, or when Tracy Morgan was in that lawsuit with Walmart, when they filed what they had to file, it was Walmart saying that Tracy Morgan should have been wearing a seatbelt. These are filings that have to be made, and ultimately, hopefully, justice will be served. We saw with the Tracy Morgan case, it settled this week, and Tracy Morgan, I think he's going to be in the Today Show or one of the morning shows tomorrow. He's come forward and said, I'm happy with the settlement and everything's fine. So it worries me as a defense attorney that defendants get the short end of the stick because they can't come out and say it, and they do these filings that they have to do, and then it gets spun that they're these horrible ogres.
Was it ever determined that Jenner was texting and driving?
Not yet. I mean, I think that there's still an investigation, a criminal investigation going on, but the wrongful death case went in like that by these two people who haven't seen their stepmother in years and years. So we'll see what happens. But his lawyers have a very strong argument with regard to the law and the lack of damages.
Okay. I'm just curious how hard it is to just check somebody's phone to see they were tweeting at a time and you know the time of the accident.
Probably not that hard.
Right. And so that's why
I mean. It's not that hard at all, right?
I think the answer is probably no.
Probably know that he was?
That he was not.
Was not.
I think we would have heard if he was.
Probably. Okay. Mr. Unger, you're up next.
So this potluck today is entitled, it has a title, it's entitled Federal Government to Texas, How Do You Like Me Now? And I'll tell you why I've titled that. As you know, there's been just a horrible series of events down in Texas the past few days, with a lot of lives lost, a lot of damage done, just terrible from these floods. Now, I remind you that just a week ago, the governor of the state of Texas, Governor Abbott, had called upon the Texas state militia to keep an eye on the federal government. Why? Because the federal government was conducting war games in the state of Texas, and there was great concern throughout the state that what they were really doing was attempting to take over, to invade the state of Texas, because we really want their problems. So this was a week ago. A week ago, the governor is warning us to be careful because the federal government's going to take them over. You had people all throughout the state once again screaming secession, let's get away from the United States of America. And yet days afterwards, when things got rough, what was the first phone call Governor Abbott made? To the President of the United States, asking for state relief, asking for federal aid to help them with this crisis that they had. Now, I'm with the governor all the way. I have absolutely no problem with my federal tax dollars going to help the people who are in distress in Texas. That's what we're a country for. We should be here for each other. It's the right thing for us to do. I got zero problem. Even though when my city was in big trouble, when my state was in big trouble, not very long ago, when we had a serious problem with Superstorm Sandy, who were the two senators in the United States Senate that made the biggest fuss about not giving us money? Well, of course, the two senators from the state of Texas. Does that seem fair to you? When they need the money, they call upon the president to deliver, but when we needed help, they couldn't care less because we're a bunch of liberals up north. That is not okay. Now, quickly, I want to show you when Texas Senator Cruz was asked about his position on all of this. Let's show quickly what he said.
The governor has entered a disaster declaration. which is the first step in federal emergency relief. There are a series of federal statutory thresholds that have to be satisfied initially. It appears those thresholds are likely to be satisfied by the magnitude of the damage we're seeing.
What a bunch of gobbledygook. Everything but simply say, we need your help, federal government. Not a good thing, folks.
Yay or nay next. Stay right. It's happy time, people. Welcome back to the Daily Wrap. It's time for Yay or Nay. First up, a Christian musical group called We Are Watchmen has released a new rap song about GOP hopeful and Rick's beer pong partner, Ted Cruz. Take a listen.
Make DC listen. Switch off the dead news, the lamestream media. Feeding us the feds do. Collectivism, everyone's a victim like the Reds do. And for our next president, we're all in for Ted Cruz.
Ignite the promise, we haven't lost it. We're gonna see our nation rise. And it only takes one spark to light the fire. We're rising, reigniting the embers that have been burning inside. And set it on fire.
Wow. Al Jazeera is going to be angry because they stole their logo.
Their logo, yeah.
Can we play more of the song,
We could have taken that to the end of the show.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Play this right out.
Will not be confused with Jay-Z. Anyway, while the senator and presidential hopeful has gone on record saying he's a huge country music fan, the thought process here is hip-hop or rap isn't in his iPod shuffle. Anyway, will this song help Cruz get the ever-elusive millennial vote, Brad Hirschfield?
The second half I'm with. The Christian rock piece works. The Christian rap piece, that falls pretty flat. I don't know who's, let's put it this way, Snoop Dogg has nothing to worry about from these guys.
Interesting. Heather, you have a Slayer t-shirt at home.
My boyfriend's a big rapper, huge rapper.
Really? I didn't see that
And
coming.
So, yeah, and I know a little bit about rap, therefore, and I don't like that.
Wow, he's got a Beastie Boys thing going on, if you know
Now,
your boyfriend,
I happen
who we
to
won't
love
mention.
Slayer.
You do, really?
You're the guy.
No, believe
No,
me.
I know.
They
It
did
kills
just
me.
fine,
Yeah,
Slayer.
they did.
Boy,
They did
we
just
really need to
fine.
move on.
Let's go.
Move on. Just end the show, actually.
It's not a good rap. I heard the whole thing last night.
Really? Okay. NYPD. How do I recover from this? Deputy Commissioner of Personnel Michael Julian recently spent $60,000 transforming an old printing room at police headquarters into a Zumba dance studio. You heard me right, a Zumba dance studio. I don't even know what that is. Apparently, Julian was so pleased with his idea that he decided to give Police Commissioner Bill Bratton a little tour. But the commission didn't exactly feel the same way about the new dance studio. In fact, Bratton was so upset, he had the entire thing torn down. This Zumba thing was not Julian's first wacky idea either. Back in January, he suggested a way to curb officers' cursing problem was to arm them with breath mints and had 10,000 packs of said mints delivered to police headquarters. He also suggested officers should spray protesters, get this, with baby oil when they link arms so they could unlink them easier. Julian has already been moved from Commissioner of Training to Commissioner of Personnel. Should the NYPD just let him go altogether, Brad Hirschfield? Yay or nay?
I like to call for people's firing, but sometimes creative ideas are just stupid, and I think we're entering that zone here.
Yeah, I don't see Commissioner Bratton having a lot of patience for this guy very much longer.
I think he was onto something with the baby oil. Give massages. You'll break up protests in no
It
time.
would unlink the arms.
Yeah.
Maybe we're being a little too judgmental here. No, we're not. An Illinois couple married for 59 years just celebrated a rather impressive milestone, the birth of their 100th grandchild. How is this even possible? Well, Leo and Ruth Quincy have 12 children of their own. That means 53 grandchildren from the 12 and now 46 great-grandchildren with the family's most recent addition this past April. It brings the total to a whopping 100. Can you have this many grandchildren, Rick Unger, and not go broke?
I don't know about broke, but I got 3 and they wear me out.
Right.
Can you imagine chasing 100 around?
Heather, how do you remember all the names?
Well, you're remembering the names, and I guess it depends on how much you spend on your grandchildren, whether or not you'll go broke, but I think you'd pass out first. Yeah,
Yeah,
exhaustion.
Name tags.
I actually know families families like this, and it can work. It has to with expectations. You don't chase them all. You don't buy them expensive presents. You actually just delight in their being there.
Names.
And you do write down their
Never
names.
met them.
No, you meet them. It's amazing. It can really work. It's just a decision that the having of them is more important than the gifts you buy them.
Wow, that's a special thing to say, and what was supposed to be a very funny type of story. Who hosts Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever they celebrate?
I know
That's
you
what
move
wanna know.
around in the families I know. The oldest member of the oldest generation, that's the host.
Okay, well, that makes sense then. That means I'm off the hook for a little bit. Anyway, thank you for joining us, panel. Great job as usual. We appreciate it. Newsmax Prime, J.D. Hayworth. That's next.